All right, welcome. Hello. How many of you are ready to learn how to give yourself a raise, like not just a quarter an hour, $1 an hour, but like 2x, 3x, 10x? Yes, wave at me. Excellent. Give yourselves a hand for being here today. I'm going to share with you the master key. If you're taking notes, that's a writer downer. The master key to giving yourself a raise is to understand the 4 levels of value. And it's really interesting that for 4 levels of value, if you will apply this principle to your business, it will take your revenue to a whole new level. And I discovered this, and I started looking at pretty much every business, every job, every occupation in the world. And what I discovered that the people who make the most money, they don't make the most money because they work the hardest. They don't make the most money because they have the biggest degrees or the most degrees behind their name. They don't make the most money because they work the most hours, but the real reason those people make the most money is because they level up and they offer value at a higher level. And I know, it's election time, and politicians love to make promises, and they love to make promises, they love to break promises, and everybody wants to talk about, I've heard politicians say, we're gonna solve income inequality, but you can't solve income inequality because income does not exist in a vacuum. Income is the result of something. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if income is the reaction, then what is the action that causes that reaction? And it is offering value in the marketplace. And the mistake most people make when they're attempting to make more money is they attempt to offer more value at their current level instead of leveling up and offering value at a higher level. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So there are 4 levels of value. And if you look at it like a staircase, it looks like this. 4 levels of value. The lowest value makes the least amount of money. The highest value makes the highest amount of money. And on the lowest level of value, you're going to find implementation. And this is a good time for me to give you an aside. And an aside, just a little side note to help you understand why this works this way. See, money, most people think that money is materialistic. They think, well, I don't really care that much about money. I'm not that materialistic. But when I hear people say that, I say, which is it? You don't really care that much about money, or you're not that materialistic, because the essence of money is not materialistic. The essence of money is spiritual. And when I say the essence of money is spiritual, what I mean by that is only spiritual things can be in 2 places, more than 1 place at a time. Like I have money in my phone on my Apple Pay, or my Apple Pay. I've got money in my wallet on my debit cards. I've got money in my checkbook, and I've got money in the bank, and it's all the same money, but it's in multiple places at the same time. That's one reason I know that money is spiritual. Another reason I know that money is spiritual, as a result, I'm talking about, money is a spiritual result because the value of money, it's not backed by anything physical. Like this says $20. So what makes a $20 bill? I've got like a couple of them in my hand. What makes a $20 bill worth $20? Well, it's not backed by anything, so it's not some physical thing that creates the value. The thing that creates the value is the fact that, number one, it says $20, which means this is worth 20 times $1, and the fact that you and I believe it is. Well, so the real thing that creates the value of money is, number one, the message it carries, $20. Number 2, the faith that it creates. You believe it's worth 20, I believe it's worth 20, so we're willing to exchange $20 worth of value for a $20 bill. You say, Myron, what does that have to do with anything? Well, the reason it's hard to make a lot of money on the lower levels of value is because you are using a physical resource, or a resource that's not that spiritual, to produce a spiritual result. So implementation is the lowest level of value. And the resource that you use at this level is you use your muscles over time. And for using muscles over time, you get paid $10 an hour, $15 an hour, $20 an hour. If you're an attorney, you might get $150 an hour, $250 an hour, $400 an hour. But until you learn to disconnect your revenue generation from time, you will always be stuck with an income ceiling. And implementation, I'm not saying that implementation is not valuable. I'm just saying that the marketplace values it the least. I stayed at the Hilton Garden Inn last night. When I checked in, I went in, the room was clean. Why was the room clean? Well, because they have people there called housekeeping staff that clean the room. I submit to you that at the Hilton Garden Inn, here in Idaho, where I stayed last night, the housekeeping staff makes less money than anybody else who works for the hotel. But they are the hardest working people. So how many of you have been taught that if you want to make more money, you have to work harder? Well, I see all those hands going up. Exactly. Well, but the reality is working harder doesn't always equate to more money. If you don't believe me, ask the housekeeping staff. And by the way, if you are an implementer, if you're operating down here, I know exactly how much money you make. You make somewhere between minimum wage and $80,000 a year. You make minimum wage if you're working at Taco Bell maybe, and you're making tacos or 7-layer burritos, and you make $80,000 if you're a high-end mechanic working on a Rolls Royce or a Bentley or something. But the reality is you're still stuck with an income ceiling. Why? You're using your muscles over time to make money. That's why you can't make any more money. And it doesn't matter how good you are down here, you are at a level that only pays to a certain amount. Well, the next level of value is called unification. And on the unification level, you are no longer the person who does the thing. Down here, implementation, you are the person who does the thing. Here, you're not the person who does the thing, you're the person who manages the people who do the things. And the skill, the resource that you use on this level, you use your management skills to make money. You exchange management skills. You manage the people who do the thing. And because you're managing people, that requires a higher spiritual acumen than doing the thing yourself, because you're managing people and you're making sure that people are getting their work done and they're not robbing the company blind and they're not sleeping in the bathroom when they're supposed to be working. And so because you're operating at a little higher spiritual level, then you get to make a little bit more money. On this level, your income, because you're using your management skills, is going to be somewhere between $40,000 a year and maybe $250,000 a year, but it's still a ceiling. Now, $250,000 is a higher ceiling than $80,000, but it's still a ceiling. And for me, I don't know about you, but how many of you, when it comes to your income, you like floors but no ceilings? Wave at me. Floors, no ceilings. Where are my people? Okay, exactly. So what we have to do is we have to figure out how to level up to where fortunes are made. And when we cross this barrier right here, this is where the fortunes begin to be made, on the two higher levels of value. The next to the highest level of value is called communication. And on the communication level, you use your mouth to make money. Why? Because language, as I already said, language is spiritual. Why do I say that language is spiritual? Language is spiritual because language represents something that's not actually there. Like if I say desk, I can talk about a desk. You can envision a desk in your mind, but the desk doesn't have to be there. You can see the desk, right? And so language is spiritual because it's something that only spiritual beings have. And so if you really want to give yourself a raise, get better at communication. Use your mouth to make money. If you operate on this level, you're going to make on the low end somewhere between $100,000 a year, and on the high end, you could make $100 million a year. I don't know about you, but the sound of that music sounds a lot better. I'm talking about people who are, like on the 100,000, you might sell cars. You might make $100,000 a year. You're a car salesman and you're using your mouth to make money. You make more money than the people who fix the cars. You make more money than the people who build the cars. You make more money than the people who clean the cars. You make the money because you actually sell the cars. You communicate the value of the car to the marketplace. The marketplace pays for the car. You earn a commission and you sell enough cars, you make $100,000 a year. But also you have authors, you have speakers, you have coaches, you have consultants, you have speakers, actors, singers, songwriters, playwrights, talking heads, politicians. These are the people who use their mouth to make money, and they communicate a message to the marketplace that causes the marketplace to see that the value that they have to offer is worth more than the money that they have to exchange for that offer. Does that make sense to everybody? Wave at me if it makes sense to you. Okay, y'all are picking up what I'm putting down. That's great. So communication, like if you really want to give yourself a raise, get good at using your mouth. Now here's the good news. Here's the good news. All of you have one. You all have a mouth. But most of us, because we've been lied to about money our whole life, and we've been told if you want to make more money, you have to work harder. Nobody ever said, if you want to make more money, you got to learn how to talk better. No way. They said if you want to learn how to make money, you got to go to school, study hard, get good grades, so you can graduate, go off to a good college, get good grades again, graduate, get a good job. But nobody told us if you want to make a lot of money, get really good at communicating, get good at crafting messages that move the masses, get good at having conversations that create cash flow. Communication is the second highest level of value. And what's really interesting is that people who make the most money in the communication level are probably singers and actors. And some authors, singers, actors, and authors. Well, here's the reality, though. What are your chances of becoming an A-list singer? Well, in 2020 and beyond, they're certainly a lot greater than they were 50 years ago because we have YouTube, right? So if I think I can sing, all I have to do is get on YouTube and sing and play my guitar. And then if a whole bunch of other people think I can sing, all I have to do is let them know that I'm coming up with a free song and I'm going to give it to them, right? But they got to give me their name and email address. And then when I come up with my album, once I've got 1 million people listening to me, then I come out with my album and I say, hey guys, I'm dropping my album. It's going to be $20, but for the first 1 million people who buy it, I'm going to let you get it for $8.99. Right? And so I use my mouth to make money. Then the highest level of value that exists in the world is imagination. And imagination is the highest level of value because on this level, you use two things. You use your mind and you use your money to make money. In the imagination level. And if you operate up here, you make anywhere from, on the low end, you might make $1 million a year. And on the high end, you could make literally billions. And these are people who use their imaginations to make money. And what's really interesting, it's so fascinating that we've told so many things about our mind when we're children, when we're growing up, as young adults, as adults, but nobody ever really teaches us how to use our mind. People say you're not paying attention, but nobody ever taught us how to pay attention. This is how you actually pay attention. They're saying you've got to get better at learning, but nobody ever really taught us how to learn or what learning is about. You've got to get good at using your imagination. I'm gonna name a company, and I want you to write it down. I want you to write down the first person that comes to your mind when I name this company. I'm gonna name a company that pretty much most of you have probably heard of, and I want you to write down the first person's name you think of, okay? Apple Corporation. Now, Apple Corporation just recently crossed the $2 trillion market cap valuation. $2 trillion. Well, 1 million is 1,000,000, 1 billion is 1,000 million, and 1 trillion is 1,000 billion. And Apple just recently crossed the $2 trillion valuation line, which means they're worth thousands of billions of dollars. That's crazy. Like when you think about that. So let me ask you a question. How many of you, when I said Apple Corporation, you wrote down Steve Jobs' name? Wave at me. You wrote down Steve Jobs. Look at all those people. That's crazy. Everybody wrote down Steve Jobs. Here's the fascinating thing. Steve Jobs didn't invent the Apple computer. Wow. Steve Jobs did not invent the Apple computer. Who invented the Apple computer? Steve Wozniak invented the Apple computer. Steve Wozniak, he did become a billionaire as an implementer, but only because he hitched his suspenders to somebody who was an Imagineer. And so what happened was Steve Wozniak created, and so by the way, Steve Jobs has been dead for what, 8 years, 10 years? Steve Wozniak's still alive, and when you say Apple, nobody ever says Woz. Nobody says Tim Cook. Tim Cook has been the CEO of Apple since before Steve Jobs died. Why do people say Steve Jobs? Because Steve Jobs was one of the greatest people who ever lived at using his imagination to make money. He conceived things, he conceived concepts that changed the world. I mean, when has any other single human being come up with ideas to take over the music industry and take over the computer industry, take over the phone industry, take over the movie industry? He took over 4 industries, took them over. Why? Because he understood how to use his mind. Oh, and his mouth. I want you to think about this. If it made sense for Steve Jobs, who basically created this business that even after his death, it just kept on growing and kept on compounding, kept on growing to the point where it's now worth over $2 trillion, he built it on 2 things: ideas and events. Apple Developer Conference. Think about this. This guy built a multi-trillion-dollar company, computer company, phone company, music company, movie company, because he had ideas. And then he'd get people together and expand on his ideas. Steve Jobs was great at creating messages that move the masses, coming up with ideas, turning those ideas into verbiage that caused people to say, where can I send my money? I remember when the first iPhone came out. I remember Steve Jobs' presentation in 2007. He said, it's a phone, it's a browser. It's a phone, it's a browser, it's a music player. It's a phone, it's a browser, it's a music player. It's a phone, it's a browser, it's a music player. He said 3 things, and he kept saying it over and over and over again. And when they launched the iPhone, they started promoting it in like March or April of 2007. It came out in July of 2007. And I happened to be on vacation with my family in Hawaii at that time. And I wanted an iPhone so bad, like nobody wanted an iPhone more than me. And so I got to the only store on the entire island that sold iPhones, the AT&T store. And when I got there, the line went around the building, and I counted the people in front of me. There were 112 people in front of me, and the store only received 8 iPhones. Talk about pinned up demand. How did he create it? Imagination and communication. Imagination and communication. And when you get good at conceiving ideas that change the world and communicating those ideas to the world in such a way that they say, well, where can I send my money? That's when you will give yourself a pay raise. It could be 2x, it could be 3x, it could be 10x, it could literally be 100x. When I think about the fact that back in the days when I used to be an implementer, I was a trash man making $6.25 an hour. And now sometimes in 1 hour, I make more money than I used to make in an entire decade because I don't work down here anymore and I don't work here anymore. I only work on these 2 levels. That's where I spend all of my work time. And if you want to give yourself a raise, that's where you got to spend all your work time. So what do you want to use your mind to do? Well, the 2 things that you've got to use your mind to do if you want to take your life and your revenue and your business to another level, you've got to, number 1, use your mind to learn. To learn, to learn. And most people don't understand what learning really is because the miseducational, misdirectional system, AKA the government indoctrination camps, schools, whatever you want to call them, they made us believe that the purpose of learning is knowing. So what we would do is we'd memorize a bunch of information that somebody else told us was important. We could regurgitate it on a test. If we passed the test, they told us we were smart and that we had learned something. But did we really learn something? Because learning, knowing is not the purpose of learning. You say, Myron, knowing is not the purpose of learning? No. Knowing is not the purpose of learning. The purpose of learning is mastery. What is mastery? I'm going to give you a definition for mastery, but the purpose of learning, I'm doing this as quickly as I can, equals mastery. You say, Myron, what's mastery? Well, mastery is the ability to execute effortlessly without the use of conscious resources. I'm going to say it one more time. The ability to execute effortlessly without the use of conscious resources. Do you remember when you learned how to tie your shoe? Do you remember how much energy, how much concentration, how much focus it took? And you're like, and then you tied it. It was so loose that like as soon as you took your first step, it was going to fall apart, right? Because you were just learning how to tie your shoe. But now when you tie your shoe, you can tie your shoe, talk on the phone, chew gum, have a conversation, and do 16 other things at the same time because it requires none of your conscious resources. When you get to the point in your life and in your business where you take the skills that are necessary for your business to be successful and you relegate those to the realm in your mind of mastery so you can execute them effortlessly without the use of conscious resources, then and only then do you have the ability to take your life and your business to the next level. So what is the process of mastery? So the purpose of learning is mastery. What's the process of learning? The first part of the process of learning is being able to receive. What does that mean? That means you must be teachable. Like, I was just sitting in the back room when Russell was talking, and I asked Melanie, I'm like, how is it? I've heard this guy like hundreds of times, and every time he opens his mouth, I learn something new, right? Because I am ready to receive. So you got to receive. Number 2, you have to perceive. What's perceive mean? That means you have to be observant. You have to pay attention. You have to see what's going on. There's a book called Mastermind, How to Think Like Sherlock Holmes. It's really interesting concept, like learn how to pay attention to things, okay? So you receive, perceive, conceive. What's conceive mean? It means be creative. Use your mind to come up with new ideas that change people's lives. And then the last one is you've got to be able to retrieve, and that's being practical. When you can do those things, you can take your life to another level. The last thing you want to use your mind for, not just learning, the other thing you want to use your mind for, which is probably even more important than learning, this because I believe this is your greatest superpower, and that is expectation. And you got to learn how to use your mind to empower your expectations. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that, and I'm going to close on this one, most people use their mind, which is their most powerful resource. It's their greatest superpower. Most people use their minds against themselves. What does that mean? Well, expectation, I believe, is your greatest superpower. If you are like most people, you use that superpower to give energy to outcomes that you do not desire. One of the things you got to do, learn to do, if you're going to take your life to another level, is only give energy to outcomes you desire and recognize that the only thing that is impossible for you is the idea that something is impossible for you. Thank you to Comic Club Live. I'm done. Have a great day. Woo!